Pokemon Sword and Shield is a video game made for the Nintendo Switch system by Game Freak in collaboration with the Nintendo Corporation. In this essay, I will prove nothing, claim nothing, and give an entirely subjective review of said video game. For the sake of context, I have not watched a single Sword and Shield review. Everything I tell you will be from my personal experience, and thus the warning about subjectivity. Also, I am not a professional game reviewer because I have a penis and balls. I do not drink soy milk. I do not enjoy soy-based products. Never even had a tofu burger. This is further evidence that I am not a professional game reviewer. I do not eat only peanut butter, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I am not a peanut butter gamer boy. I do, however, have a bald spot because of too much testosterone in my body. I apologize for putting schmutz on the lens of my Samsung J7 Crown. My beautiful, wonderful Samsung J7 Crown, my $150 phone with its shit microphone. I'm just so sorry. Also, biggest complaint about Pokemon Sword and Shield is the lack of Pokemon. I say you should get fucked if you want more Pokemon in this game. Instead of having specialized routes, the game instead opts to have wild areas. I call this a trough of entertainment. A trough of entertainment is a term that I have invented because it has never been existed before. I don't know if another game reviewer has used it, but if they have, I haven't seen it because I am not, nor do I consume any content created by video game reviewers. And what a trough of entertainment is, essentially, is a single place where they put everything there is to do in a game. As opposed to video game classics like Donkey Kong Country 64, or really any video game with a level select. A trough of entertainment is a type of video game that provides you with a single area, as previously described, where you can do everything. It sort of creates this cesspit of interactable objects. The entirety of the game World of Warcraft, minus the dungeons, is a trough of entertainment, for example. Fighting games might be considered a trough of entertainment because every level is the same. By that same token, the wild areas in Pokemon are troughs of entertainment. If for no other reason, they are not bisected, and every single Pokemon is in your way, under your feet, in my ass, at all times. But while it is true that the number of overall Pokemon in this game is not as high as it was in previous generations, you encounter every single one of them constantly, in real time, all the time. Imagine, if you will, being in a ball pit with Cantonese women. Now, you may not be familiar at all with the Cantonese. That's fine. They're a rare people. They're a bit like shiny Pokemon themselves. But a Cantonese woman is about 4'11", looks kind of like a 9-year-old boy. That's why people from the Vatican visit that country so often. So imagine, if you will, that you are a Catholic priest from the actual Vatican, sworn to never lay with a woman as long as you live. So you fuck boys. Everyone covers it up for you, and you get paid for it. You get caught once or twice. First they send you to Europe, and then they put you in a safe in the Vatican for who knows how long. But now imagine you are that guy, that you are this man, and a truck busts in through your wall where you're studying the Bible to figure out, I don't know, better sales pitches for the kids to jump on your sort of shrunk in the microwave Ziploc bag looking penis. It's fine if it's still recorded. Yes, just like that. I like uncomfortable camera angles. So either way, a truck bursts through your wall, killing you instantly. and you wake up in a ball pit. Except every single ball is a 24-year-old Cantonese woman. You may not necessarily want all of the targets that are currently surrounding you in this particular analogy, especially if you take the priest part literally and the part of being surrounded by adult women of Asian descent. You can hit that whenever you're ready. Some of them have fully developed Western-style breasts. Some of them have what? Some of them have. I'm spitting on my beautiful workout partner. Looking good. You're looking balanced. Good pace. Keep that up. Either way, you're not in need of targets because ultimately all these bodies are still, 4'2", 4'5", pretty much exactly what you're after, but only a few of them are actually, constructed in such an androgynous fashion, and even less would require you to use no protection without consequences, similar to what you're used to probably back in your Brooklyn church. But to bring it back to actual Pokemon, still got Snorlax, you still got the Greats, you've still got whatever that Pokemon is that is a literal walking pile of garbage. That's one of my favorites. Which one is that? Garbodor? Yeah, it evolves from Trubbish, right? Trubbish. Trubbish, did you take the Trubbish out? Did you shoot him? He's seen too much. But yeah, they're still there. You can get all the Eevees. Like, you're set. All your perversions, everything that you're really after in this life is all around you. You're just also surrounded by, Sing Songwei, who will talk to the police about the way that you look at her. So to insinuate that there's not enough Pokemon in the game is one of the biggest criticisms I've heard is ridiculous. There's not enough Pokemon. There's so many, both the ones I don't want and the ones who still look like Tommy Bridges, age 9.5. Loves baseball and Beyblades. I'm saying there's just so many of them, it's actually a bit of an annoyance. And in order to really cement my analogy before I'm finally done with it, is that only someone who genuinely has like physical problems or maybe a mental deficiency would ever want to actually catch every single one of these creatures that they encounter. They smell like crayons, and they don't have any social skills. They basically live in a box all day. Okay, now I'm done with the pedophile analogy. Next thing that was the biggest criticism of Pokemon Sword and Shield is the difficulty. Basically saying that there is not enough difficulty, which is reasonable, honestly. I'd say that's the most legitimate criticism of the entire game. Form looks good. Yeah, you're killing it. You pick that thing up, just don't let it get uneven. Your hands are even. She's got it. Nice. Yeah, the game is easy. Your rival, Hop, is his name. For some reason named after a beer ingredient. Probably because it's very bubbly personality. It makes perfect sense. It's a great pun, but he's a terrible opponent, frankly. He picks the starter that you're elementally weak to, which I understand has been a trend in these games for the last little while. The challenge in the game comes from his older brother, who is a Chad in every sense of the word, frankly. He lives in a European country, but he's clearly of Arab descent, so it's pretty obvious that he is having sex with all their women. There's no doubt in my mind that they probably flock to him and in fact do things to him both within and outside of his dressing room that would probably make the Greek kings of old, like Caligula, feel like, well, probably most of you watching this at home, like people who've never had another human being even look at their genitals if they weren't a medical professional, and then of course they probably do so with a disapproving or disappointed air of pity. But that doesn't matter because I'm absolutely certain that Hop's older brother Leon is in fact gay, which I will prove with the only bit of editing that I will do in this entire video, where I place his face over my girlfriend slash fiance's. She's both of those at once, because I still date her. Look at her, well, right now all you see is Leon. But you see that? You see what's going on with his facial hair up there? See that? That is a slot to place a manhood. Earlier, when I said that most of you watching this video probably have medically disappointing genitalia. I know that's not everybody. I know some of y'all are them real dick having motherfuckers. 5.5 inches, 5.9 inches, you know, real dicks. The average length of the male genitalia in the United States is supposedly 5.5 inches, but averages do not mean statistics. There could be a lot more little dick having dudes in the world, but you know, like 20 mandingos could make up for that real easy in the law of averages. And I know all of you are at least some of them, you know, real dick having dudes. 5.9, 4.9 maybe. That's more than the Chinese average of 4.4. So good job for you. I'm not even going to talk about the gym leaders in Pokemon Sword and Shield. They're not good. Their challenges are hokey. Okay, so the fighting gym where the boxing gloves punch you over and over again. That was pretty good. And the guy who's Water Rock, he actually swept my team almost one time, kinda, sorta. I cheesed the Dynamax mechanic to wipe out his last 3 Pokemon. But in terms of difficulty, no, the game is absolutely just not present. It is a cakewalk. What it is doing is encouraging you to be like a person who's escaped from a country with food scarcity inside of a popcorn chicken factory that's been closed, but all the chicken is, you know, still edible. Maybe not good for you. Because it's not good for you doing what the game wants you to do. It's a waste of your time, and frankly, it's going to bloat your stomach and distend your bowels. The game wants you to collect them all, not catch. What you're doing to these Pokemon, you're not catching them. That would require there to be a struggle, or for you to have to outsmart the Pokemon in some form or fashion, which I mean, if you understand all of your basic shapes and know how to play the game rock, paper, scissors, if you can subtract, which if you're someone from a normal income, I'm sure you're used to that because all you do is subtract from your earnings. You don't understand dividends, long-term returns, how to make up for costs. But either way, you know how to, you know, remove numbers, and you know how to not remove numbers enough to have 0, I assume. Otherwise, you probably didn't pay your internet bill and you can't see this. If you can do basic math and understand the game rock, paper, scissors, you can and will collect every single Pokemon in this game. The story of Pokemon Sword and Shield is not worth mentioning. Frankly, no Pokemon has had a very compelling story. It's just not necessary. It's a game about battle. It is a game about stat upgrades, controlling your EV and IV points. It's about breeding creatures with a semi-sapient pile of genetic pudding. It's interesting in its own right. You don't need a good story for a game whose mechanics are so solid they can keep you engaged. You only need just enough story and graphics to make sure that those mechanics exist in a framework that's appealing to the viewer. That's why I'm pretty sure that there's a Tetris made out of anime titties. I will Google that, and when I find it, I will put that on the screen as well. But that's not editing. I'm a professional video editor. I've done it for 11 years. I know what editing is. That is not editing. That is a Google search and one image. So anyone who makes vlogs, any professional game review boys with your Soylent Green shakes and your Nintendo Switches that you didn't buy with your own money like I bought mine. They were bought by your boss because he likes the way the inside of your girlfriend's asshole feels. You're not video editors. Also, the game makes a mistake of putting in so much dialogue that it sort of reveals the fact that it isn't heavy enough on the mechanics. Too much space filled with words, not enough playing. The main villain of the story, his plans don't really make a lot of sense. For some reason, they decided that the way to make a villain sympathetic was to give him an environmental aim. He was worried about the conservation of energy, when you really can't conserve energy. You can only conserve energy sources. And they never discuss the source of the energy so much as they just sort of say it's running out without any proof, kind of like real climate change. And at the end of the day, they reveal the big bad, who's this big super legend Pokemon with no build-up. They never let you see the room where it comes out of until it's already out, which means you really don't have any context for its existence. It's a big skeleton energy dragon, and frankly, like a lot of modern day Pokemon, it just looks like a Digimon or a Zoid. If you've ever seen one of those, if you happen to be a boomer. I'm not a boomer. I'm not a Generation X either, whatever the fuck that is. I had Capri Suns, but I don't remember a time without internet, really. At least not a worthwhile one. The point is, you end up defeating all of the bosses, all the big bad guys, with relative ease. And everybody says, whoop-de-doo, save the day. It's kind of a wish fulfillment fantasy, which is a positive point for me. See, I'm no longer a middle manager. I used to be one at a news station, but the boss felt threatened by me, so he closed my department because I wouldn't give him free things. I wouldn't give him any gifts. I wouldn't bring him his coffee. And if you project that kind of energy in a modern day work environment, even if people just sort of suspect you wouldn't bring them their coffee, then they will sabotage any and all of your efforts, which is kind of what Game Freak, clearly the beta male office manager, did to Nintendo. They sabotaged their cash cow in order to, I guess their hope is to get away from making Pokemon games. I can't talk and do my squats at the same time. I just went down 5 pounds because I'm cutting. So I'm doing the talking between the sets instead of trying to talk and lift what's essentially an entire incel at once. I would assume this person is, of course, an involuntary celibate because of the fact that they cannot put on mass. Unlike me, I have the opposite problem. I bulk very quickly. My neck is so thick you may as well count it as the chin that I do not have. That's why I have all this facial hair. I was talking about Castlevania, right? What the fuck was I talking about? Pokemon. Yeah, okay. Trough of entertainment. I'm just kidding. I remember talking to you about the Chuck E. Cheese fucking fun ride that is the plot. And the fact that there's so many Pokemon. And they're just literally shoving them into your hands. Like, you know, free candy at a diabetic suicide pact party or vaccinations to the poor. Isn't it funny how poor people always need more vaccinations than rich people? There is no Elite Four, really. There's the final bosses, which you will defeat. If you've played the game at all, if you haven't put your starter in the Wonder Trade, you're going to defeat the bosses. You will become the champion. Leon, I assume, will do as all the champions did before him and give his anal virginity to you in the locker room afterwards. That's why his mouth is set up the way it is. Yes, that's a substitute. If you win, you get to suck the other guy's dick or the woman's she-cock, if she happens to be somehow genetically hybridized with a hyena. I'm not really sure what Leon would even do with a woman. I think he'd get lost on the way to the clitoris. But once you do that, you have the post game. You have the battle tower, as people call it. And I know something I'd call them, the battle tower. No, I don't actually. My dick is not a part of infrastructure. Repopulation comes before war and after, not during. Nobody wants to have babies while they're certain someone's going to come along and take all their land. When you have babies play Pokemon Sword and Shield, it gives you the feeling of being in a medieval country during peacetime when crops are abundant and taxes are low. It's easy. Men are expected to be men and raise Pokemon. But then you get to the battle tower, the post game, and it's sort of like nowadays. Instead of, you know, a medieval country in peacetime, it's more like a modern country where they don't really have peace and they don't really have war, because real war would spell certain death for all the powerful, rich people in the world. Like, you know, you, the champion. And they can't risk that. They can't risk that destabilization of the power structure. Otherwise, you would probably not be interested in the game. See, old school guys like me, we had Punch Out. And in Punch Out, you could lose your title. You could have everything stripped away, no more purses. Your coach doesn't believe in you anymore. He's just waiting on you to have a son so he can train that guy. Or waiting for you to have a daughter so he can, you know, get, you know, the silver, gold medals in every sport. They can't risk that. So instead they give you the battle tower, which is essentially the video game equivalent of armed conflicts by drone strike instead of war. The AI of the people in the battle tower finally is somewhat reactive. It's pretty cool. You actually need to construct teams. It's so rough that for the folks who are just complete casuals and do things like, you know, only have the Pokemon they like instead of any meta Pokemon in their team, or people who only leveled up their starter, they let you rent teams. Sort of like fucking your wife with a rented dick, though. There we go. It's really the only worthwhile thing to do other than fight your friends. Which is also a nice metaphor for modern day war, because it's just a bunch of countries who are allies pretending to fight guys they label bad. If you really think about it, the countries they're fighting are just poor. Just like you are picking on poor, non-sapient AI to feel like you're still playing a Pokemon game. I'd say Pokemon is a game that's a good example of what happens when you move to a populist culture. Like when you vote for candidates like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, or anybody really like Andrew Yang. When you vote for those people, you end up with Pokemon Sword and Shield, because it's a game with a ton of quality of life improvements for casuals and the genetically inferior folks who can't do math or can only do basic math. It's great for them. It's wonderful for them. But anybody who's interested in any form of elitism, like the OG Pokemons, or like people who support the feudalist system, you know, Chads, it's a terrible game, because it gives you a bunch of stuff you don't want and a bunch of things that you really don't think you needed, in order to get the thing that everybody says they want. But once they have it, they realize it's wasteful, too much to handle, and they wish they had earned it. When I give an objective rating, I think, what if this game, even though it's a sequel, came out all by itself, out of the blue, with no context? If that were the case, Pokemon Sword and Shield would be a cult classic quickly. Nobody would have played Pokemon Go because they would have thought it was a Neopets ripoff. But if Pokemon Sword and Shield came out today, people would consider it a typical, boring JRPG with a neat monster training system. They would say the plot is nothing to write home about, and that the fact you have a rival that isn't as strong as you, they'd say is inventive, but only because that would be the alternate timeline where Pokemon Sword and Shield came out by itself with no context. However, since it's a sequel, I give it a sequel rating as well, looking at the rest of the series. Considering it's in competition with such titles as, you know, Ultra Sun and Moon, Ruby, Sapphire, it's not a game that really feels like it was necessary. It's like the extra kid that the king had in order to help ensure that no matter what happened to his family, no matter how many of them were killed, there would always be somebody who came out of his balls that would be in charge. It's a disappointment in comparison to all the other kids, but only because the other crown princes are fencing geniuses, or, you know, they can eat pussy really good, and they ended one of our international crises that way. At the end of the day, it's not a bad game, but it is a bad Pokemon sequel. It's clearly meant for very young children or people who don't have enough time to grind, who need handouts in order to be great. It won't give you the same satisfaction as making it in capitalism, but it is free healthcare. As an objective score, 6.5 out of 10. It's not a bad game. It conveys its mechanics extremely well. It gets the point across on what it's trying to do, who you are, what the world is doing, and what you're doing in it. It is interesting enough world building, only enough plot holes to bother adults, but it's not a game made for adults. Kids may not notice those plot holes. Hell, people who don't study writing ain't gonna notice those plot holes. But as a Pokemon sequel, I wouldn't give it the tank reviews that other people are, not that I've seen them. I hold it up to what I consider to be the best game in the series, which in my case is a tie between Pokemon Heart Gold and Pokemon Black 2. And in comparison to those games, considering all it could be, 4.5 out of 10. Game Freak, you're phoning it in. You did some stuff really well, but you don't get credit. No credit at all after the legacy that you've established. Nobody should. So with that, Pokemon Sword and Shield, I would say, bad game? No, but bad Pokemon and bad Game Freak. I don't care what you're trying to make. You're not allowed to give up the Golden Goose, especially when it's a fairy fighting type and it's going to evolve at level 50. Me personally, I don't think any game under a 5 out of 10 is worth buying. However, the amount of enjoyment I got out of Pokemon Sword and Shield, because I am not currently able to hardcore game, I'm lifting too much, I'm starting 3 businesses. I just recently decided that my spouse and I are probably going to buy a small Guatemalan country from the drug lords that control it. Just too much on my plate. So I got $60 worth of enjoyment, but bear in mind, your money may be worth more to you. Maybe you get it from your parents. Maybe you work a part-time job. So if $60 is a lot of money to you, if you wouldn't throw out $60 on payday without having a panic attack, don't buy it. Small children who don't understand the concept of money and adults who have more money than they have desire to live, highly recommend. Entirely worth it. Plus, all the free stuff you're gonna get. Not the free DLC, you still gotta pay money for that because Game Freak finally gave in and they really just want Nintendo to take Pokemon away from them is my prognostication. Here's hoping they make a new Dragon Quest or some shit. Cheers, comp. Now I just gotta get home and finish editing this.
Nazi, Nimi.